All right, today we're diving deep into the brutal and honestly brilliant narrative design of a character's transformation. And we're not just talking hero to villain. No, this is about a man becoming a god. And the path to get there? Well, it's paved with the deliberate, systematic destruction of his own mind.
Yeah, that's the central hook, right? The question that just hangs over this entire story. This isn't about accidentally falling into power. It's about a calculated, brutal climb to the top where the price of ultimate power is, quite literally, your own sanity. So where do you even start with a transformation that intense? It begins with a pretty radical idea, actually. For the new thing to be born, the old thing, the traditional hero, has to die. It has to be completely dismantled. And let's be super clear, this isn't some tragic fall from grace. It's a choice, a deliberate, strategic rejection of old values. The character Wotan, he looks at things we'd call virtues, honor, destiny, and he sees them as prisons. Beautiful, shiny prisons, sure, but they're still chains keeping him tied to a world that's already dead and decaying. This table really lays out the whole philosophical war, doesn't it? On one side, you have the old world, honor, fate, and this kind of comfortable stagnation. But on the other side, that's the terrifying new reality Wotan is building, a purposeful descent into madness, the total embrace of his own will, and this constant violent process of becoming something more.
But why? Why would anyone choose this? Well, the narrative gives a very clear answer. Because the old way is broken. It's empirically proven to be dead. Events in the story, like the green gold farce, are basically the nail in the coffin for the old gods and their rules. It forces his hand. He has to throw out those old moral anchors and build something new from scratch.
Okay, so how do you actually pull off this kind of internal demolition? It's not just, changing your attitude. It takes a very specific and deeply corrosive kind of technology. And that's where these mad runes come in. They are the core mechanic here. You have to think of them less like magic symbols and more like a corrosive computer virus for the soul. Their only job is to get in there, rewrite your internal logic, and force a complete and violent break with the reality everyone else agrees on. So how do they actually work? It's basically a three-pronged attack on the mind. First, they just deconstruct logic itself, shattering all the rational ways we make sense of the world. Then, they create this linguistic corruption, basically poisoning your thought patterns. And finally, every single rune he carves is like a formal declaration of war against shared reality, a total rejection of the illusions of a dying world. And this comparison just makes it so clear. Traditional runes, they're all about naming things, stabilizing reality, creating wisdom. The mad runes do the exact opposite. They tear logic apart, they reject reality, and the impact, well, it's a literal hemorrhaging of your own humanity. Which brings us to the whole blood carving thing. It's visceral, right? But it's not just for shock value. That literal bleeding is a strategic move. It's how he drains away all those human, all too human feelings. Pity, fear, empathy. You get rid of those, and you create this perfect, empty vessel for raw, unfiltered cosmic power. Okay, so the internal hardware has been completely rewired. Now what? Let's talk about how all that internal deconstruction starts to manifest as terrifying external power. In the story's 19th century setting, this chaos magic shows up as divine lightning. And we're not talking about a simple spell here. It's a weaponized state of being. In an age that's obsessed with rational thought and polite society, this power just incinerates all of that. And it shows you the raw, chaotic frenzy that's actually humming underneath everything. And this is maybe the most important point of all. Wotan doesn't use this power. He becomes it. He doesn't wield the storm. He is the storm. And that's a superior state because it completely bypasses the limits of the human mind. There's no filter, no logic, no reason to water down the raw power. It's just pure, direct will. So what happens when that kind of power can't be contained inside one person anymore? Well, in the next stage, we see Wotan's shattered mind literally start to bleed out and rewrite the physical world around him. The world around him becomes what German philosophers called unheimlich, which we usually translate as the uncanny. And what that means is the environment is no longer just a passive backdrop for the story. Oh no, it becomes an active, distorted, and frankly hostile reflection of Wotan's own broken mind. You see this happen in three key ways. First, the world itself starts to feel like it has its own malevolent will. Then things, both physical and social, start to just fall apart, mirroring his own psyche. And finally, the line between Wutan and the world, it just evaporates. Reality becomes a direct projection of his will.
So what's the end game here? This is where the narrative does something so audacious. It completely redefines madness. What you or I would call insanity is reframed as a superior way of seeing. It's positioned as the only state of mind that can actually perceive reality for what it is, completely stripped of all our comforting lies and moral filters.
All right, so we've torn down the hero, we've rewritten the soul with mad runes, and we've warped to reality itself. Now it's time to bring it all together for the final act, the crowning of the Mad Rune King.
This final state, his new operating system, is built on 4 world-shattering ideas. He no longer just corresponds to reality, he creates it. Madness isn't a flaw, it's a higher form of perception. Morality is gone, replaced by the simple math of power versus weakness. And truth is only found in constant, endless struggle.
So what does all this add up to? The source material has the perfect name for it, a tragic triumph. He gets everything he wanted, absolute power, total sovereignty over himself and reality. But the price tag is staggering. A horrific total isolation from every other living thing.
But, and this is the final mind-bending twist, that isolation isn't his punishment. It's the ultimate proof that he succeeded. By completely throwing away the need for validation, for connection, for anything outside of himself, he proves his transformation is complete. He's become a universe of one.
And that really just leaves us with this one final, chilling thought from the design document itself. It's a stark summary of this whole philosophy, and it forces you to ask, what kind of person does it take to achieve that kind of power? And is the prize really worth the devastating self-inflicted cost?